I said, if you think you can come before the throne of God in all your pomposity and arrogance, well then, burn, damn you, burn.
Wow. Wow. Oh, boy. Hey everybody, it's Abdu Murray. This is Coulda, Shoulda, Woulda. This is a series of short videos where I talk with people who basically do what I do for a living, and people who present the gospel, who equip Christians on how to present the gospel for a living, and often present the credibility of the gospel using evidence and argument and reasoning and these kind of things. But what we do is we come and we share an experience where we coulda, shoulda, or woulda done something differently in a conversation we've had, or a Q&A from the platform, or any manner of different communications where we've botched it. And the reason we do this is to encourage you. As I said before many times on these segments before, I've gotten a lot of people who've said, man, I wish you were there when I was talking to my uncle, or to this guy I met on the street, or man, I love Greg Koukl's books, and if he was here, he could have used one of his tactics in this particular instance, and he could have really done a great job with this. But the reality is the Lord has you there. And so what we want to encourage you is that all of us, me, Greg Koukl, Gary Habermas, a bunch of other guests we've had on the show, they've all gone through this before. And we've all rehashed the situation and said, man, I really wish I would have done it differently. And then we actually do it differently the next time. So I have with me today Greg Koukl, my good friend Greg, and
Hey,
Greg. Hey, and Greg is a lot of you know who Greg is, and Greg is the author of a book that I recommend. I can't think of a time, honestly, when I've spoken from the platform, maybe a few times, where I haven't recommended tactics, a game plan for discussing your Christian convictions, which is relatively recently updated. And I've interviewed Greg before a few years ago when it was recently updated. So if you don't have a copy of it, make sure you get a copy of it. And you won't necessarily make the same mistakes that we're going to talk about today. He's the founder and president of Stand to Reason, a wonderful ministry that I've had the pleasure of working alongside in various venues, where Greg and the guys at Stand to Reason and Amy Hall and all the team really do a wonderful job of equipping Christians to give them confidence on how to share their Christian convictions. Now, having had that set up, Greg, let's talk about a time when you coulda, shoulda, or woulda done something differently in a conversation or any other kind of context.
Yeah, well, the first thing that comes to mind, I've given this some thought, Abdu, since we've talked about doing this segment, and it goes back to my earliest days as a Christian. And that was when I was, to put it mildly, spreading more heat than light, all right? And I was involved with a Christian community in Westlake Village, right where UCLA was at. And so we would do these events that we'd invite a lot of non-Christians. In this particular case, we had a facility there on the university. We showed a movie that was Christian themed. It was meant to stimulate their thinking. And then we did divide and conquer. Everybody mixes with everybody else there, and you have conversations, whatever. Now, something that a lot of people maybe not realize about me is I was a real live wire when I was a new Christian. I was discipled aggressively by a sweet, sweet dear man, Craig Englert, that really helped me along, and but early on I was a real handful, and this illustration or this anecdote will give you a sense of that. Because I was talking with a young man, I can even picture him in my mind's eye right now. He's a big guy like you. He had blonde hair, non-Christian guy. And as I'm talking to him about the gospel, I was cutting right to the chase, which I don't recommend now for those familiar with gardening and the tactical approach. But I cut right to the chase with the gospel, hammering him with the gospel. And of course, he's raising objections and concerns about, well, what about, why do I need Jesus? And I wasn't making good sense of it to him. Mm-hmm. And so he says to me, if your God will not let me into his heaven just because I won't believe in his son, well, I don't want to spend eternity with him. Okay. Now, I look back at it now, and I think, well, I can understand why I'd say that the way I was communicating. I wasn't giving a full-orbed, full-fleshed kind of explanation of how this all works together.
Yeah.
But remember, I was young, and that will also account for my response. Because what I said to him, I kind of got up in my prophet pose, and so this is going to be a little tough for some of the more sensitive ears, but this is what I said to him. I said, if you think you can come before the throne of God in all your pomposity and arrogance, well then, burn, damn you, burn.
Wow. Oh boy. Oh boy.
Now, I didn't whisper this. I didn't say it at like I just did. I was really letting him have it, And this is one of those moments where the room goes silent, and people are thinking, "What was that?" Oh, that was just Koukl witnessing, kind of thing. Now, I don't think that guy. I don't think he became a Christian.
Yeah.
So anyway, there was like, whoa, that was way over the top. And of course, my discipler had a conversation with me afterwards. He was in the room. He was part of the group, and he was aware of what just took place. And so he was a sweet guy, and he didn't yell at me or shame me or anything, but it's like we had a come to Jesus moment after that,
Yeah. Wow.
So,
wow. Well, so now, I got to tell you, I'm sure there's at least more than one other person. There's more than one person on this call who's on this video who's done that kind of thing too. I've done the same thing.
That would be yours truly, right? Yeah,
yes, indeed.
right.
Yes, indeed. Where I've gotten passionate, and I've actually shared a story one time where a guy did this. I was sort of told ahead of time at a Q&A, this guy's going to come and he's a troublemaker. And I expected him, and I even said, okay, I'm going to be as level-headed as I possibly can and all that. And he said what he said, and said, you should read more on this, which of course got my dander up, and said, I've read plenty on this. And I got upset, and I flew off the handle. I didn't fly off the handle in a berating kind of a way, but my attitude was
like
not
I
what
did.
It should have been. Yeah. But I had the blessing of a colleague standing next to me who sort of jumped in and diffused it. But so looking back now, obviously, if you have that kind of question, let's just say that particular thing. If he said, if your God wouldn't let me in just because I don't believe this one thing, what would your response be now?
Well, there's a couple things I learned from that, and in direct answer to your question, I would explain to him that he's misunderstood my point, because nobody is going to go to hell. Now, this is a refined point, but a lot of people might say, wait a minute, is that right? But hear me out. Nobody goes to hell because they didn't believe in Jesus, just like nobody dies of disease because they didn't see the doctor. It was the disease that killed them. And when you read in Revelations 20, you see the great white throne judgment. There's no question, did you believe in Jesus? No. Okay, into the fiery furnace you go. No, it says each one, the books are opened, and each one is judged according to their deeds. So it is man's acts of rebellion against God, and those are legion for each one of us, that are recorded in the book. He's making a list. He's checking it twice. And we're not going to get away with anything. People say, how did that guy get it? That guy got away with murder. Well, he's not going to get away in the ultimate sense, but neither are we. And so when we get judged, and I think the wording there is so valuable because it shows that God is justly judging those who had committed crimes against him. Now, there's another book, and it's the book of life, of course, and that's the rescue. The names in the book of life are the ones for whom Jesus has taken the punishment so that we don't take the punishment. Now, see, these are the kinds of things I probably in a conversation with this young man would have led up with to that point, so there wouldn't have been that confusion. I don't think, and maybe it would happen, I don't think that now somebody would make that statement to me, because I would lead into the conversation a very different way. I'd be asking a lot of questions, like I did with one person who is an attorney. I asked him, I didn't know he was an attorney, but I said, do you think people who do bad things ought to be punished? And he said, well, since I'm a prosecuting attorney, yes. I said, okay, I agree with you. By the way, have you ever done any bad things? And he said, well, yeah. And I said, so have I. I agree with you there. So we both agree on two things. People who do bad things ought to be punished, and we've both done bad things. I said, you know what I call that? He said, what? I said, bad news. Okay,
Yeah.
so now you got bad news in place for the good news to make any sense to them. So that would be the way I would lead up to it now. And incidentally, that little anecdote is actually in the tactics book because it makes a particular point about how we communicate.
Yeah.
And because I'm leading up in a different place, I probably wouldn't get in the same bind that I got myself into. But remember, this was probably 47 years ago. It was a long time, and I've learned a few things since then. And if I had led up that way, Abdu, and the person still said that, then I would say, I'd apologize. Say, apparently I didn't communicate my view properly. Are you thinking that God won't let you into heaven simply because of lack of belief in Jesus? Yeah, that's the way I understand it. Well, that would be pretty petty if that's the way it was. But that isn't what I mean to say. So let me try it again.
Yeah.
So I'd cover my bases again, and hopefully if I'm careful enough to communicate that the problem is our rebellion against God and our culpability, and the solution is Jesus, just like medically our problem might be cancer and the solution is chemo, well, then that will be, are you saying that I'm going to die if I don't take your chemo? Well, that's not bigotry. That's just medicine. It's an accurate assessment of the circumstance. Okay.
Yep.
Now, I can also say, Abdu, if I could add a couple of other things here, is that my attitude wasn't right. I was cocky, I was smart alecky, I was really aggressive, and this is why I, took the self-righteous, condescending tone that I did with him when I responded to him. Okay. This is something that I'm really stand to reason over 29 years now has really tried to counsel against, kind of a harsh, angry, hostile, gladiator type interactions with people. And the rule I follow now, I try to follow, I'm not always so good at it, but I'm much better than I used to be, Abdu, is that if anyone gets mad in the conversation we're in, if I get mad at them, if they get mad at me, if anybody gets mad, I lose. Because that's not the kind of environment where people are in a position to consider the ideas. Incidentally, this is a benefit for guys like you and I who get to talk to audiences, because when you're talking to an audience, an individual in the audience it's not an ego game for them right there. It's not a face-to-face thing. You win, I lose, I win, you lose kind of thing. But they're much more in a position. This is why I like giving talks like this. You can develop your argument. You could lay it out more carefully. You're not yelling at somebody, reacting to their responses. And they have an opportunity without as much ego in the way to consider the points you're making. And hopefully, using my terminology, I can put a stone in their shoe. But even when it's not an audience, I still try to accomplish that same dynamic in a conversation that I have with people.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, first of all, that's great advice. And I want to just focus on one thing as we bring this to a wrap here, is something important. I think that people often fear that if they don't take that advice and they don't apply it perfectly, that somehow they've either disqualified themselves from having these conversations. Let's say they're a naturally passionate person, they're fiery, they're hand-wavy like me when they speak, and they say, okay, look, here's the rule, here's the sort of guideline that Greg laid out for how we need to go about doing this. The thing you said that I think is encouraging, that we need to add and not gloss over from what you just said, was you don't always do it perfectly either. This is a rule. This is a guideline that you try to go through. And just because you didn't do it right one time doesn't mean you can't do it right the next time. So friends, this has been Coulda, Shoulda, Woulda. My good friend Greg Koukl just laid down some wonderful advice, gave us a really good story, a little insight into the into younger Christian Greg that I'm glad I now have. But thanks for joining us, Greg, for Coulda, Shoulda, Woulda. It's been a pleasure to have you on. Join us again if you would.
I'll be glad to do that, Abdu.
All right, friends. Coulda, Shoulda, Woulda. See you next time.